previous chapter of the story of Nal and Damayanti, we learned how Damayanti used the resources of her father's kingdom and located Bahuk. We also found out how she cleverly lured him into coming to Kundinagar without wasting any time. In King of Vidarbha, Bhima greeted King Rituparn of Ayodhya in his private assembly and made necessary arrangements for his dinner and stay. King Rituparn was surprised that there were no other guests in the capital, nor were there any other arrangements resembling a Swamvar assembly expected the next day morning. King Bhimak had no clue that Rituparn was visiting Damayanti's Swamvar and asked, "O king, what brings you here to our humble abode?" Realizing that there is no Swamvar being held, he said, "I was passing by and thought I should seek your blessings." Bhimak obviously sensed there was more to it than King Rituparn was letting on. However, decided it was wise not to push any further. A royal guard accompanies King Rituparn to the guest chambers. Bahuk and Varshane were given a place to stay in royal servant quarters near the stables. Not seeing Nal, Damayanti was getting worried. She called her maid and said, "Keshini, you go to the servant quarters and find out who this ugly man is. It is possible that he is my husband in disguise. You go to him and tell him the same story I told those messengers. Listen to what he has to say and then repeat his answer to me verbatim." Keshini went to the servant quarters and asked Bahuk, "Bahuk, where is King Nal? Do you or Varshane know anything about his whereabouts?" Bahuk told Keshini, "Me and Varshane are charioteers of the royal carriage of King Rituparn of Ayodhya. We have brought him here to participate in Damayanti's Swamvar. Varshane had dropped Nal's children here and went to Ayodhya. He also does not know where King Nal is." Bahuk went on, "King Nal is living in disguise. Only he himself or Damayanti can see through his disguise. He is very disappointed that Damayanti decided to marry again. He left Damayanti because he was not in his right mind and has been suffering ever since. Damayanti should not be angry at him. Instead, she should show empathy." He could not say any further and started crying. Keshini went back to Damayanti and narrated the entire incident to her. Hearing this, Damayanti was almost certain that Bahuk is Nal. She told Keshini, "You go back to servant quarters and keep an eye on Bahuk. Observe his every behavior very carefully." Keshini did as she was told and observed Bahuk for some time. Afterwards, she came back to Damayanti and said, "Oh princess, this Bahuk is no ordinary man. He has some extraordinary abilities. When he picks up an empty pot, it gets filled with water on its own. He doesn't need to light fire. He just picks up a piece of grass and it catches fire on its own. Not only this, when he picks up dry flowers, they become fresh again. I have never seen anyone who can do these things." Damayanti was certain that it is Nal only who is disguised as Bahuk. She asked Keshini to do one final task. "Keshini, you have helped me a lot. Now I ask you to do one more task for me. Take my children Indrasen and Indrasena to Bahuk." When Bahuk saw Indrasen and Indrasena, he got emotional. He hugged both kids and started crying. He looked at Keshini and said, "Oh Keshini, these kids are almost the same age as my children. That is why I got emotional meeting them. Please go now and take these kids with you. You should not come here again and again." Keshini went back to Damayanti and told her everything. Damayanti called her mother and said, "Mother, I had the suspicion that this charioteer Bahuk is my Nal. I have tested him through Keshini and now I have no doubt in my mind that it is King Nal only living in disguise. Now I want to test him myself. Please allow me to visit the servant quarters or arrange for Bahuk to come here." With permission from King Bhimak, the queen mother called for Bahuk. When Bahuk saw Damayanti, his eyes got filled with tears. Damayanti also started crying and said, "Oh Bahuk, once upon a time there was a great man who left her wife in her sleep in the middle of nowhere. Have you seen him anywhere? The wife did no wrong. Neither she gave her husband any reason to leave her. Yet he left. Have you met that man?" Tears started falling from Damayanti's eyes. Looking at her in such a state, Bahuk could not stop himself and said, "Oh my dear, I did not want any of this to happen. It was Kaliyug who influenced me to do all these unfortunate things. You need not to worry now, since Kaliyug is out of me now. I am here for you only. The moment I heard the news of your second Swamvar, I came here as fast as I could. Now tell me one thing. What possessed you to go for a second marriage?" Damayanti said with folded hands, "O noble king, you should not blame me like this, for there is no Swamvar. You know very well that I chose you over gods, so there is no question of me marrying again. I am still devoted to you. I concocted this second Swamvar story only to bring you to Kundinagar. I knew there is only one who can cover this long distance so fast. There was no other purpose to it." Hearing Damayanti's explanation, Bahuk wore the clothes given to him by Karkotak and came back to his earlier handsome self. Seeing him back in his old form, Damayanti lovingly hugged him. Next day morning, a public announcement was made in the kingdom informing everyone of the return of their son-in-law Nal. Entire Vidarbha kingdom started celebrating his return and reunion with Damayanti. When King Rituparn found out that it was King Nal only who was disguised as Bahuk, he asked for forgiveness for any hardships he might have had to endure while living in his kingdom. Nal expressed his gratitude towards the king of Ayodhya for his kindness and helping him in his time of need. He also taught him the skill to train horses as promised. Afterwards, King Rituparn returned to Ayodhya. Nal stayed in Kundinagar with his in-laws for a month. Afterwards, with permission from his father-in-law, he left for Nishad. Bhimak sent his son-in-law with a gift of 16 war elephants, 50 horses and 600 soldiers. Once in Nishad, Nal challenged Pushkar for a rematch. Nal said, "Oh cousin, I am here to challenge you for a game of dice. You either accept my challenge or face me in a duel to settle a score." Pushkar, overconfident about his victory, again accepted the challenge and said, "Oh, looks like you have found some wealth. I promise you, this time I will win Damayanti also." The game was set. Only this time, Kaliyug was not living inside Nal. Neither the dice were loaded to favor Pushkar. To top it all, Nal now had the knowledge he got from the king Rituparn. This time, the odds were in Nal's favor. He started winning everything back from Pushkar one by one. He won back the kingdom of Nishad, his army, his wealth, his palace, everything. In the end, Pushkar bet himself and lost. Now Nal said, "Pushkar, this kingdom now belongs to me. I am your king, Damayanti is your queen, and you are her servant." Pushkar sat at Nal's feet with folded hands seeking forgiveness. Nal continued, "Oh fool, you never beat me. I do not want to hold accountable for a conspiracy masterminded by Kaliyug. I forgive you and return your city to you. I wish you to live your life in peace with happiness." King Nal again sat on the throne of Nishad and started ruling along with his beloved Damayanti. After narrating this story to Yudhishthir, Brihadashva Rishi said, "Like you, King Nal also brought hardship upon himself by falling victim to an unfortunate game of dice. He had to endure all the hardships alone. You at least have your brothers and wife for company. You should not be sad and lose hope. The way King Nal got back his kingdom in the end, you will also win your kingdom back and rule over Hastinapur when this ordeal is over. Kalyug blessed King Nal that whoever narrates or listens to the story of Nal and Damayanti will be free from the evil influence of Kalyug. We wish everyone listening to this finds peace and hope and be free from bad influences.